a wonderful thing that could happen.
Well, I was going to say, no, the one thing about the QSL radio show, you're allowed to go down any rabbit hole you want. Okay, if you want to change the subject and start talking about craters on the moon, the floor is yours. And that's the thing I've noticed. I've noticed that looking around, I could not find tabletop DRM receivers, or portable DRM receivers. And there may be out there, and maybe I'm just not looking in the right place, But that was the thing that went through my mind. I was really, really shocked at how it sounded. And then I also wondered why we didn't adopt that system for AM radio here in the United States. They came up with IBOC, and what a mess that is. I'm just telling you, I have to work with it every day. We have 2 IBOC FM transmitters, and I'd rather take a beating as to start tearing into those things, and it's all owned by this company called Ubiquity, and the radio stations have to pay Ubiquity a royalty. And I thought, why didn't they all go DRM? Can you imagine DRM in your car when you flip to AM? It's just, it's seedy to think of some of the routes that we choose to go down here in the United States of America. But anyways, if there is some hams out there that have, and I'm thinking of one guy in particular that I worked with a little bit. His name's Brian Kirk, and Brian, if you're listening, this is your opportunity. You get a hold of Lauren Libby and talk about that and see what you guys could work out. That would be good if somebody could put one on the market. Now, are they being manufactured at all in China? I would think that they have some sort of edge on it, but is that possible, or has it even been done yet?
Well, yes, it's been done, but the issue is the cost. And, you can buy a DRM receiver, but they're anywhere from $150 to almost $300. And if you're going to use that in a country, that's very prohibitive. And so what you need is a receiver that's down somewhere, under $100. And one of the problems they've had is the same thing as with IBOC, is the royalty licensing for the software. And that has just come out from the intellectual property rights, and that has just been that problem's just been solved. So basically, what you're doing is you're putting a small computer in a box and calling it a radio. And with DRM, you not only can transmit audio. At the same time, you can also do a data stream where you can transmit PDFs, you can transmit photographs, you can transmit a number of things. We do DRM transmitting, and to give you an idea of the efficiency of it, to do what we on analog do with 225,000 watts, it can be done with 70,000 watts on DRM. And so it saves a lot on power bills, and we transmit a QSL card at the same time we're transmitting audio. And I get from SWLs across Asia all the time copies of the QSL card that they basically print as they're listening to us on the air.
That's incredible, and I think that the QSL cards are still active, and people want them. I mean, we get requests constantly. David just got done mailing out how many? I don't know.
There's a giant stack.
Yeah.
There's a giant stack out the door.
And
plenty of hams out there.
So that's very cool. I'm just wondering, that mode of DRM, wonder if that wouldn't work as a mode on ham radio, much like AM or something else. Would that? I'm just wondering how complex that would be to build that into a ham transceiver.
Well, a variation of that. I mean, ICOM has their and Yaesu have their digital systems, and it's sort of a takeoff and a hybrid off of what DRM does. And the ham bands are really ripe for that. That would probably be the next step. That would be the equivalent of Art Collins starting single sideband and making single sideband usable for the ham bands. And can you imagine using that type of technology to communicate on our HF frequencies, with clear fidelity and we all operate sideband. I mean, and we wouldn't sound like Donald Duck. We basically would sound like Ted Randall with your voice.
Oh boy, that'd be a horror show for somebody. But the one thing that bothered me when I was a kid, when I was first getting into ham radio, these fellows used these old Motorola rigs, and they were big. They'd go in the trunk of the car. Some of them had the what kind of motors are they? They're
dynamo.
Yeah, dynamotor in the back. Yeah. But anyways, the clarity. Oh my goodness, it sounded like an FM radio station. The voice was just incredible. Okay. Then something changed. Exactly what it was, I don't know. But from that point on, the 2-meter audio went downhill. And that was the thing that attracted me to it. I was just intrigued by how beautiful the audio sounded. Well, then it changed, and it dropped in frequency response and dynamic range, and all that went out the door. And if you talk to the average ham, they'll say, well, you don't need that. You don't want that. And I'm like, the heck you do. That's what attracted me to it is, hearing a voice come over a speaker that sounded was right there in the car with you, So I don't know. I think DRM would offer that. I think they could use it everywhere. I think they'd use it on 2 meters. They could on VHF, UHF. They could also use it on repeaters. They could use it, on the HF bands. I mean, I believe it would work in all those places. And the human voice would be sounding so natural, And I think that's another thing that's important, even about shortwave, and that the human voice sound natural. And sound like, it's believable. Matter of fact, I just shut the microphone processor off here about 15, 20 minutes ago. It was driving me nuts. And I tried about 6 different settings, and man, it just made it sound like I was coming out of a cardboard box. I don't know what's wrong with it. I've never had that before. So it will come out tonight, and I'll put my air core back in there. Nothing goes wrong with an air core. So anyways, it'll go in. Because that gives you a little bit of EQ on the mic, so you can tone down the bass if you want and bring the highs up and that sort of thing. But to me, it seems like the DRM would be an incredible medium for amateur radio. I think it would be,
I think it would be, and in fact, there's a movement to in AM radio. If you read the trade magazines, to go totally digital. In fact, the FCC actually licensed a station outside of D.C. I think it's in Maryland, and they're broadcasting on the AM band in total digital. And I was reading an article today in Radio World, and they're saying that there's a push to go digital on the AM band because everybody's always been looking for something that would be competitive in terms of FM and the other type of voice modes in the broadcast band. Hams have always been on the front end of technology. And, the very first, you think about, who was it, Feddersen, who did the violin, the first actual voice transmission over the air? That's ham radio. Ham radio has developed things. Then you could imagine you have your cell phone text, okay? We were texting before we went on the air here. Do you know how that was developed? That was a group of hams at Nokia in Finland that realized that text messaging was nothing more than packet radio. And so they took packet radio, put it in a portable cell phone, and that became text. And so a lot of this stuff comes right out of ham radio. And I will guarantee you, if you're operating FT8, that has applications far, far beyond, because you can actually detect signals, 15, 20 dB below the noise. And you can imagine the applications that has. And so pat yourselves on the back, hams, because, the future's bright. And if we continue to lead the technology, it's amazing how industry will finally figure out that that's viable, and it'll become every day. And it's the same way with DRM. And so I think, as hams, we really need to get back to our basic roots of experimentation and new things and move forward with it. And ham radio is a great way to do that. I mean, I know a number of young hams, and you probably do too, Ted, that are working on software that's unbelievable in terms of signal processing, in terms of the ability to collapse bandwidth. Hey, it's just the future is very bright, and we need to recruit people into ham radio. I watched the ARRL, and I think the ARRL could do a tremendous service by getting people into that. And we have internships here every summer. We have about 17 to 20 interns, and it's amazing to watch them, particularly engineering students, and as they begin to experience technology. Now, we won't have them this summer because of, obviously, everything's shut down. But I think as hams, we need to get back to Elmering, and we need to instill that love of technology in people's lives at a very early age. And it's amazing to watch that mature over a period of time and see literally where those talents end up.
And that's something that I've just, I don't know, it kind of makes me ill when I think about it. That as young people, are we really doing the job and pointing them in that direction and getting them interested in ham radio for the right reasons? I don't know. I mean, I look at what some groups are doing and all that, and the kids come out and they'll work a contest or they'll do something like that. But when they go home, are they going into the radio room to get on the air and talk in their off hours? Are they building kits in their off hours? Are they doing things that takes them into this fraternity, I will call it? That's what Art Bell corrected me and said, don't call it a hobby. It's a fraternity, and really it is. The whole thing is how do we do that? I don't believe the cell phone came along and that kids lost interest in ham radio, because it's a whole different thing. You get a kid and you set him down and you put a microphone in his hand, and he knows that this thing is feeding an antenna. There is no direct connection to the internet or phone lines, and he's talking to some guy 2 or 3 states over, and they engage in a conversation. It has a whole different effect on the kid. He lights up like a Christmas tree, and then you say something, hey, how would you like to help me put an antenna up? And they light up. It's like, yeah, let's do this. But I think the big problem is we have, as ham radio adults, we have lost sight of pointing young people in the right direction. Or at least that's what it feels like to me. I think that we've got to do a lot more simple mentoring, not necessarily really involved, off-the-wall kind of stuff. I mean, we need just to do some simple mentoring. And if you're a ham, when is the last time you ask a kid that was 8, 9 years old or even older, 10 through 15 years old, how many times have you invited one of those kids into the shack? And I'll tell you, I had a lot of people tell me, well, they're 80-meter band, boy, they're really getting rude on that band. I went into the 80-meter band with my grandson sitting in here. Now, David, my son, who's sitting across the way here from me, had tried to get Brian into ham radio. He had got him the ham test online thing and everything, and there was nothing happening.
Nothing.
Okay. So I called him downstairs, and I said, come on in here and have a seat. And I dialed up on 80 meters, and I found me a round table of guys just shooting the breeze. And I just jumped in, and I said, hey, fellas, I need to give me a hand here. I've got my 15-year-old grandson here, and he's kind of a little interested in ham radio. Why don't you demonstrate to him how it works and tell him where you're at and what the weather's like and all that. So they got on, and they were talking to him, and they were saying, hey, Brian, it's so many degrees here in Houston, Texas, and they just start chatting like that, and one guy asked him, say, well, Brian, do you have a girlfriend, And, when we got done with that QSO, I moved up the band and did the same thing all over again. And then I moved up the band again, and I did the same thing all over again. And they were all friendly. They were all accommodating. They were all encouraging him. Hey, you need to get your ham license, and you can get in here and, ruffle the feathers of all of us old guys or whatever. That's how they played it. And, he left my room down here in the studio. He left, went upstairs, immediately got on Ham Test Online. And what did he do? Study 2 days?
Yep, it was just about 48 hours, and he was done, ready to go.
Yep. And he went down, tested, and passed, and got his technician. So I believe that's the stuff that grabs their interest. They don't care about cell phones like that. That's a different ballgame, Hey, I'm talking on a radio. It's hooked to an antenna that's strung between two trees. It's there's something intriguing about that. Now, go ahead. Tell me to shut up, Lauren, and you can make...
Let me give you another example. We have interns in here, and they're college from freshmen through seniors. And when they come in, one of the things I do is kind of give them a spectrum. Are you familiar with D-Star?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what D-Star is basically web modes hooked together. And to sit and explain what you can do with RF and the marrying of RF and digital, and they sit there and they go, well, that's really interesting. I said, well, do you have a router in your home? Yeah. Well, that operates at 2.3 gigahertz. That's a radio. That's a transceiver. And so we just talk about the applications. And, data is being... Everybody's looking for data space. I mean, the
de la economía nacional.
El desarrollo de la campaña
made harder for Cuba to
de las vacunas cubanas anti-COVID-19 en varios municipios.
And there's a whole band, the 5760 ham band's probably going to be snapped up for data transfer, and that is all done with RF. And you have to go higher in frequency as your bandwidth increases. But just to sit here and talk to people about that, and then I take them up to the ham shack, which is on the top floor here, and I get on the air on HF and on CW. And, it's da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and they will sit there and they'll look at me and they say, what is that? And I'll say, well, that was the original digital language. That was, basically on and off. And that's how the whole digital communication strategy on your computer and your cell phone and everything started, with that kind of technology in terms of just on and off. And so we sit and talk about that. And, I watch them every summer. They get mesmerized by the fact that, that RF energy is pretty interesting. And when you think about it, the marriage of digital and the marriage of RF really intersect, and they're intersecting more and more and more. I was operating field day. I think this was about 4 years ago out in Colorado Springs. We have a home out there. We moved to North Carolina from Colorado Springs. And I was sitting by a young man. We were operating, I think he was on 20 meters and I was on 40 meters, and we were operating CW. And he probably was about 24, 25 years old, and he took off his headphones, and I took off my headphones, and I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm working on a PhD in RF at the University of Washington, at UW. Really? I said, what are you thinking about? I said, when do you graduate? He said, well, I graduate in about a year and a half. And I said, well, how are the job prospects? He said, I have 70 job offers, 70, when I get out of here. And he said, it's all by digital companies that want RF technology. And he said, it's because I'm a ham that I'm able to do that. And I thought, we need to begin to think about that. And universities are beginning to think about RF again, because how do you officially transfer data? It's basically a transceiver. And that's what you're operating, is the marriage of data and the marriage of RF. And I think, as we're beginning to just expose people who are in their 20s and 30s to that, in terms of a future, and it's a bright future. Frankly, if you understand electronics, Ted, you're a broadcast engineer. I did that for years. You know what? You're in demand, because you can't even find a broadcast engineer that understands RF anymore, because we haven't turned out one in probably 25 years out of the universities.
You know, it's interesting. I brought my grandson in here, and I said, now, look, here's the computer. I've installed the software. I want you to hook this all up because I'd like to see us operate, excuse me, on WhisperNet. I think my voice is going. Anyways, he connected it all up, and it was amazing. We sat here, and with running about 5 watts of power, we were getting received all over the place, excuse me, including Antarctica. And I just thought, where else could you do something like this? Have you ever operated WhisperNet?
I have, yes.
Well, now, what's your opinion? What do you think about it? I mean, I thought...
I think you talk about the coolness factor. It really is when you stop and think about it. I mean, I'm operating FT8 on 2 meters and above, and that whole thing of weak signal is amazing. What you can do when you marry RF and you marry computer capacity.
Yeah, the one, excuse me, the one fella in Antarctica that had responded to our signal also was responding to a fellow's signal somewhere north of us, up like toward Canada. And that guy was running like less than a half of a watt. And he was being heard in Antarctica. And there is a perfect marriage between data and RF. And you don't really realize it until you see it operating. I've never operated FT8. Matter of fact, we're set up here. We could do it in a heartbeat. I tend to stay off of things I don't understand. But a lot of friends of mine operate FT8 and they love it, and I don't know what you can do, for the guys out there that's never ventured into it. Tell us a little bit about what you can do with FT8.
Well, I've operated weak signal VHF and main bounce for years. And it's always been more power and very sensitive receivers and big antennas. That's what it takes. And when you do FT8, you are actually able to detect signals that are, anywhere from 17 to 20 dB below the noise floor. And so what you can do, it's absolutely amazing. Several years ago, Dr. John Jones, N0Y, and I operated from Bonaire on 6 meters for the June VHF contest. So we took 2 stations. We had one that was a sideband station, and we also took an FT8 station. Now, I operated the sideband station, and we had a couple of European openings. I think I made about 10 contacts in about 4 countries. John was operating the FT8 station, and he actually logged 17 countries on a dead band on 6 meters from the island of Bonaire. And that just gives you an idea of the efficiency of it. It's absolutely incredible, and it's a lot of fun. If you like to work DX, I mean, people get on 20 meters with it and have DXCC. I knew one guy that got DXCC in less than 6 months. And it's because your ability on a dead band to actually carry on transmission and the exchange of information. So, and I think we owe a real debt of gratitude to a guy by the name of Joe Taylor. He's K1JT. And he came up with all of this FT8 and digital type processing. And most people don't know that Joe Taylor actually won a Nobel Prize for physics. And he used to be at Princeton. And what he did was he took his physics, he took his education, and he took everything and invested it back in ham radio. And that's why we have FT8 and WSJT, which stands for Weak Signal JT, Joe Taylor. And if you ever have a chance to hear him talk, it's just absolutely incredible. And if you want to be motivated in terms of the future, just sit around and listen to Joe Taylor for a while. He's probably in his 70s now, but I tell you, he's one of the most relevant people I've heard speak in a long, long time. And he's a real gift to the amateur radio community.
Well, we need to check and see if we couldn't get him on QSO. I don't know. That would be a cool person to have on. And I've heard of him. I mean, I've heard the name, and I may have met his acquaintance at Dayton. I'm not sure, but it just seems.
I'll bet you've met him at Dayton. Yes.
I mean, there's so many. That's another thing too. There's so many people in amateur radio that are so interesting, that possess skills and ideas and idea sets that most people can't even dream. Until you actually get into it with your sleeves rolled up, and then all of a sudden you realize how deep whatever this is that you're looking at is. I mean, even today, I think that with all of the gadgets we've got that converts Morse code to, a readout on your screen, all these different things that we have that are just, the JT8 is a good example. And I remember, what were some of the early data modes? PSK 31? Is that it? I'm trying to think.
Well, actually, RTTY was one of the first ones.
Yeah, I had a Model 15. Am I telling my age? I had a Model 15 printer and with the keyboard and everything on it, and then I had a tube type TU. And I remember toiling over winding the toroids in that thing to get them right. And we'd park it on one frequency, and all of us guys would jump in and have like a round table all day long. And we did it up on 2 meters too. And that was, that was fun, but you'd sit there and hear that machine start up in the middle of the night, chunk, 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 chunk. It's like, somebody's talking to us. Who is it? And that was just a load of fun. But today, the electronics has moved along so fast. There was someone who was telling me the other day that there was a converter that he had that would connect up to the radio that would give you, JT8, would give you PSK 31 or whatever that is, and also would operate RTTY. And I thought, my goodness, it's hard to believe that, but nonetheless, it's true. So, the door is wide open for experimentation and learning, and that's something that intrigues me. I just wish I had more time to devote to learning and tinkering, if that makes any sense. Do you have opportunity to tinker? And I think that's it's just so important.
Well, I wish I did. I mean, unfortunately, right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and how do you keep an organization operating in the middle of a pandemic, and how do you keep 23 high-power radio stations operating around the world, and just developing content to be able to transmit? I mean, it's a major thing, and maybe someday I'll be able to go back to tinkering again. I'm not sure, but one of the things I do have is we have a ham club here, and like I mentioned, the call is K4TWR. So if you hear us on the air, say hi, and we do mess around. And sitting here and operating a contest occasionally, and there are only so many hours in the day.
I know, and you get lost. At least I do. I start off my day thinking, okay, well, today I'm going to get to this, and I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and it's the tasks at hand, the things that you need to do to keep everything running, generally take over, and you never get to any of the fun stuff. It's just the way it is. And but tell me something. You keep all these stations going. How is this pandemic affecting all you people? I mean, that's definitely going to have a bearing on on air travel and things like that. How are you all coping with all that?
Well, we've operated, with video conferencing, and 75% of our people right now are working remote. And in some of these countries, they're in a total lockdown mode. And so everything that occurs has to occur at home with a computer and to be able to be connected and download programming into transmission sites. And so we've been working on that, and our engineers, we really probably have not missed a beat. And because we do everything pretty much remotely, I'm spending more time on Zoom than you can imagine. I think I've worn out the app on the Zoom app, basically on my cell phone or on my computer, because that's the way we're communicating. And Skype and the other type of things. I'm talking to you tonight on Skype. And so because of that type of technology, we're able to continue on and do programming. And we have engineers actually in one site in Africa. The engineers are living on site, and we've packed in a bunch of groceries, and they're basically there on site in case something happens. And the same thing happens, in Asia. And on one of our transmission sites, our engineer only gets over there they finally unlock it that you can travel one day a week in that particular country. And we broadcast into India from there. But it's you have to get creative. But these days, 20 years ago, you'd never been able to do it. But today, with the technology we have, it's incredible. You can operate literally a global broadcast system from living rooms. I can turn it off transmitters literally from my cell phone.
Oh yeah, that's we operate with the same thing. We turn things on and off the cell phone. We take care of about 8 radio stations here in Nashville that are FMs, 1 AM, and everything is controlled by the cell phone and login, and it's like you don't have to leave the comfort of your home you have to work on them. To work on them, you definitely do. But one thing we're fortunate with here, and that is there's nobody at the transmitter sites. So we travel out there, and we're alone. We're working inside of a building where there's nobody except us, and I think that kind of minimizes your risk, or at least for us. We spend a lot of time at the FM transmitter sites, and sometimes I don't think the owner understands how many hours it takes to actually keep these things in shape and running and on the air. And, of course, all of our rigs are energy onyx. I don't know if that means anything to you, but to some engineers out there, they'd be tearing their hair out. Bernie Wise and his energy onyx creations, they were. But, we get good service out of them. We keep them up, and we maintain them and keep them clean inside and all that. And I think that's really a big part of it, man. If you keep a transmitter just slick whistle clean inside, and you don't let dirt build up, especially around areas where you might form an arc or something like that, the things just run. They really do. But as soon as they start getting dirty, and you don't pay any attention to that, well, you start having problems. Well, you had the 100,000 watt rigs, and then you went to the the Thompsons, which are what, 250,000. So, how much difference did you see between putting out 100 kilowatts and 250 kilowatts?
About 4.5 dB.
Well, you can translate things for dB, but I guess I look at it like, what do you notice on the receive end? I know that the noise level drops, and the fade, it doesn't fade as much, on shortwave. You get into these phase shift fades, and, the signal will go up and go down, and it'll go up. If you're listening on a decent receiver, it'll fluctuate sometimes as much as 4 or 5 S units. And that's on the analog. That's why we want to get rid of that fade, the shortwave fade. But when you go digital
and you're at 70,000 watts, you don't have fade. It's like your cell phone. You're either there or you're not there, and it requires less of a signal, less RF to be able to do it from in a digital type mode on shortwave. And that's one of the reasons why we're very interested in beginning to develop this DRM, this digital radio mandal.
I like the way you say that. Well, the thing that bothers me is I think it's fantastic. But the thing that bothers me is, how do you get receivers to people? I mean, you're looking at, I know you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you visited the continent of Africa and other places. And these folks there, some of them can barely afford a handheld radio. They just... But on the other hand, many of them are doing without television. So the radio is the focus. At least with emails I've read coming in here, people make comments like, "No, we don't have television." Some of them have obviously satellite television available, but for some reason they don't have it, and I don't know why. If it's just out of their price range or whatever, but. There's nothing beats, like a $20 shortwave radio. So, I've got this going through my head, and I'm thinking to myself, pushing, let's see, you put a broadcast on for 6 to 8 hours, and you're doing it in DRM. Are you then excluding and cutting out the analog listener? Are you alienating him? I don't know. I just, if it was scalable back to where the AM listener could listen and the DRM listener could listen at the same time, that would be really cool. But how does that work? Do you see that, or is that an obstacle, or how do you see that?
Well, it's a transformation, and again, that goes back to I'm appealing to some enterprising ham that can put a receiver together for under $100, because if we can do that. I placed an order for 6,000 receivers, and we're actually doing receiver development ourselves, and we've worked with several people to get a very practical situation. And the reason we're interested in that is because for about $160, you could put a DRM receiver in a village and be able to transmit not only audio but also text materials, various other things on other data streams that go in there. Anything you can digitize, you can basically transmit. And it's, when it gets here and it becomes reasonable, you stop and think about, are you familiar with WLW up in Cincinnati?
Oh, yeah.
500,000 watts. Back in the late 1930s. Do you know why that guy put on 500,000 watts? Because he was trying to sell receivers and there wasn't anything to listen to. And so that's the reason that he put on the nation's station, was so that people would buy his receivers, Crosley receivers. The problem in broadcast right now is we build transmitters that nobody can hear. And if you build the receiver first and then build the transmitter, can you imagine how different that would be in terms of shortwave operation these days?
It'd be a whole different concept. And speaking about WLW, if you build a receiver that can pick up this big hoss radio station, then you've got it knocked. You really do. Because that's what it's all about. And when you build stuff that nobody can hear, well, and that's a problem. It really is. I've noticed, though, as of late, I've noticed that shortwave has become far more of a cult item than it used to be. Like I said, we did our request thing and got 8,000 requests on a Saturday night. That's a lot of people, But then the programming kind of dictates to a lot of people. It's set up to play the music they grew up with, and we like to intertwine the message of the gospel in between that. You want to do a rap on radio? Play the Stones, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, and tell me how long you can talk about that. That's just the way it is, too. I mean, the song tells it just exactly the way it is. So I see that as a useful tool. But somewhere along the line, you're right. And it's the same thing with IBOC. I mean, nobody listens to IBOC. Tell me something. They're now starting to put it in cars, okay? And the big problem we've got, of course, is one car manufacturer uses one radio and another one uses a different type. And then we delay our analog signal to match up with the IBOC signal so that if the radio switches, which it will, back and forth, at least they're aligned. Well, the problem is the car manufacturers are putting radios in that have a completely different cache or a different system. So it'll work in one set of the car radios, and then another set of car radios, it won't work at all. It'll be out of alignment. And, stuff like that's just maddening. But DRM is not like that. DRM is set up so that, there is no weird, delay and other things that you have going on with IBOC, which is, I guess I'm an enemy of IBOC. I think I'm not the enemy of digital broadcasting. I'm just the enemy of that system. And so was Bernie Wise, from Energyonics, man. He just thought the people that put, IBOC together were crazy. And he came up with another, what was that system he had? I can't remember now. It wasn't DRM. He called it something else. But it worked exactly like DRM. I bet you it was a copy, And isn't it true that in Europe, a lot of radio stations use DRM to broadcast as their normal mode, or have I heard wrong?
Well, actually, in Europe, it's called DAB and DAB Plus, and it's delivered from cell sites is the way it's actually delivered, and it's not in a normal broadcast band, but. In Europe, it would be DAB Plus, and when you go outside of a country, like in Germany, I was listening to DAB, went across the border into the Netherlands, and it was no longer there. And one of the reasons that governments like DAB is they can control the content within their own borders.
Wow. that sounds like a disaster unto itself. Although there's a couple of radio stations here in Nashville, I think somebody needs to step up and control the content. It's pretty bad, And we've got some shortwave people on the air that it's like that. You just wish you think to yourself, why are they doing this? And of course, they're doing it because they're getting paid to do it, And we've refused a bunch of that type of programming. I'll be broke, turn the transmitter off before I'll turn it on and broadcast some of that stuff. Listen, we're out of time. I imagine you're going to be in trouble with somebody for being on this radio show this long. But we're going to have to do this again. And there was a whole bunch more questions I wanted to ask you about your operating and the things you're doing, but we're just flat out of time. So why don't you close out with whatever. Actually, David, you got any questions or comments for Mr. Libby here?
Again, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, sir. I was looking through, as I often do. I often, go through the website and look at it. You've got a ton of resources that's up on your site. A lot of different ways of, being able to help and communicate.
Technology, but you basically, I lose you, David, when your audio stream comes into Skype.
That is weird. Try again.
Testing 1, 2, 3. I was basically, maybe that's the audio that we're hearing is me coming back weird.
Can you relay? I can hear you, but when David's there, basically just lose our connection.
I'll get on the main mic here. No, I was just saying that. I was going through your website and looking at all of the different resources and whatnot that's up there. Just a myriad of excellent resources that people can, to help spread the gospel. keep it alive and keep it going. So again, just thank you for everything that you do, sir.
Well, it's a delight to be able to co-labor with you, and I know a little bit about what you do, and you're affecting people deeply in terms of your professional life and in terms of your work here at WTWW. And so, thank you very much, and God bless you. I think we all have a calling in life, and we all have a certain amount of time that we're on planet Earth, and then we check off. And it's very important, I think, to figure out what the future is going to be. And it's not just a near-term future, but one of the reasons I gave my life to Jesus, because it's a long-term future.
Well, there you go. We've been talking to Lauren Libby, and Lauren Libby is the, give me your title so I get this right, with Trans World Radio. Are you still there? I'm losing the Skype connection here. Oh, that's what it is. I was just saying, give us your official title there at TWR.
Well, the official title is International President and CEO. And but you know what? Actually, I work with a team of people, one of the most talented teams I've ever worked with. And it's such a privilege to be able to work with high-quality people. And I tell you, to be able to work with high-octane people is a privilege. And, titles don't mean a whole lot in what we're doing. I'm the guy that's ultimately responsible. But, we have some phenomenally talented people who are involved in this organization.
Well, I can only imagine the amount of technology it takes to do everything you're doing. Folks, you need to go up to their website, which is basically, I believe it's twr.org. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there's all kinds of things up there. Online streaming and the schedules for the shortwave broadcast transmitters, and you can listen by means of shortwave wherever you are in the world or on the planet, and you can listen streaming to all the things they're doing, and it's quite amazing how you keep it all going. I have no idea. I couldn't even fathom running an operation like that you're in. I mean, it's mind-blowing. You must have God's Spirit working with you and working with God's wisdom and all that, or I don't think that would, in this day and time, it wouldn't be possible to do what you're doing. Well, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and say 73s, and thank you for joining us. We'll have to have you back again soon. You're listening to, the broadcast has been with Lauren Libby of Trans World Radio. Go ahead. I heard you take a breath.
I was just going
Ladies and gentlemen, notice the sound that you're listening to in the background. What is it? Well, you know as well as I do, it's the sound of the ocean. We want you to remember that name, Ocean. That's right, Ocean. They are a manufacturer of unique, incredible Wi-Fi internet radios, and you need to check out their selection. They've got great pricing, and they have backup and support for their radios. Plus, they keep their own database. It's not just going to go away someday and your radio go dead. No. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like for you to check out their little portable. They've got something that's so exciting. It's a portable, carry-around Wi-Fi radio that you can take with you anywhere you go. It's an exclusive from the folks at Ocean. So check out the Ocean Wi-Fi radios right now, today. Don't buy another product. Buy one you can trust and one you can count on, and a name you can count on. And that name is Ocean Wi-Fi radios.
WTWW, Lebanon, Tennessee. Broadcasting from the United States of America. We're American proud. WTWW. One of the best kept secrets in ham radio is an online publication called The Spectrum Monitor. Have you ever heard of it? Well, if not, you need to go to their website, thespectrummonitor.com. That's thespectrummonitor.com. Each month, all kinds of pertinent articles pertaining to ham radio, shortwave, citizens band, scanning, Wi-Fi, you name it, it's in there. Color pictures, incredible writers writing these articles. You just have to check it out. You need to subscribe. Go to thespectrummonitor.com. Once again, the website is thespectrummonitor.com. Give it a look over and subscribe. thespectrummonitor.com.
Everyone, it's Bob Heil, and we're here at Christmas time. December is my favorite month because I get to play Christmas music. I listen every day to Christmas music from some of my wonderful friends and organists, as well as I play every day. And that's what we're going to do here for the next